We are going to talk a little bit about curriculum and in the Common Core era. And I only have 35 minutes, which is my greatest challenge today. Talking to all of you is not an issue. It's trying to fit it all in 35 or 40 minutes. So I'm going to do my best. If I start talking really quickly, you'll know that I'm starting to worry about time. I have a few people out there that are going to give me some signals when I'm getting close. Okay. The first thing that I want to address with you today is what I think most of you probably, when you see Common Core, the things you start thinking about. I've heard a number of teachers over the past couple of years say some of these things. Are the Common Core here to stay? Why isn't Illinois saying no, like everyone else, right? Should we spend all this time talking about Common Core, aligning our curriculum, going to workshops such as this, spending money, if it's just going to go away? How many of you have had one of these thoughts over the past year or so? Okay, thank you for being honest. You're not alone. I've heard it a lot, which is why I want to get this out in the open right before we start. Let's cut to the chase. Yes, some states are pulling out, and many more are opting out of the assessment consortia. Why are they doing that? They're doing that for a number of reasons, and I'm not going to get into these so much today, but these are all obvious to all of you. These are just some of the reasons why states are pulling out of these and asking very good questions about Common Core standards. But what I say, because I don't want to spend time talking about these things, what I say and my attitude in life is let's see the cup as half full. Let's look at Common Core standards as an opportunity, whether they're here to stay or not. Things change in education. Those of you that have been around as long as I have know that things do change. But I'm asking you to focus on this is really good for kids right now. And as an educator, I want to do what's really good for kids right now, even if it changes tomorrow. And if I have to change what I'm doing to make sure what I'm doing is best for kids, then so be it, and that's what we're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about when you complain to other people about Common Core standards, what it might sound like. For example, I don't want to set rigorous standards for my students. Really? I hope not. Whether we have Common Core standards or not telling us rigor is a good thing. We should always set high expectations for students because 9 times out of 10, they rise to them, don't they? When you think that they can, they can. My students can't meet these standards. Ooh, I really hope a parent doesn't hear you saying that one, right? Okay, so think about some of these things that when you talk about Common Core, what it might sound like. Why should I change something when it's going to just change again anyway? Well, I think I already addressed that one. Because it's research-based and it's what's best for kids. What's wrong with the way we've always taught kids? It worked for me when I was in school. Have you ever heard anyone say that one? Are kids the same as you were when you were a kid? No, they are not. I see lots of people nodding their heads. My children that are 11 and 13 have to teach me how to get around my iPhone half the time, right? Okay, probably a 5-year-old could do that. When I was 5, I couldn't do that. So we can't teach kids the same way we did. Kids are different than they were. Why do politicians think they're writing standards for who do they think they are writing standards? They didn't write the standards. Okay, this is a misconception. Some people that argue with me about Common Core standards say, why do the politicians think they're going to tell us how to teach kids? They didn't. Really smart people wrote the Common Core standards. People that understand what's best. They understand literacy and math instruction better. They got the very best people involved in writing those. Politicians didn't write them. So don't let that concern you. So let's spend the rest of the afternoon with me and with all the people that you're going to be going out to hear more exciting things from later on. Let's focus on the intent of Common Core standards and embrace them no matter what happens in the future. Because high expectations are always a good thing. Because rigorous content is important. Because they focus on high-level thinking skills. And students today need to be thinking at high levels because we're preparing students to be competitive in the global economy. And as we know, that gets more and more concerning every single day. We need our students to be prepared for what they're about to face. And we're teaching a 21st century learner. Because literacy, which is my favorite topic, sorry, math people, but I will just put it out there. You're going to hear me get a little bit more excited when I talk about literacy today. But because literacy is the key to access all the other content areas. And the Common Core standards tell us that. So yay, they got that one right for sure. And because it's about backwards planning. The ELA standards are grounded in something called anchor standards. And those anchor standards are so important to look at for even a kindergarten teacher. So everyone can see, where is it that we're going? Why are we doing it in kindergarten? So that I can look to the future. And backwards planning with an end in mind is always a really important part of developing curriculum. Because Common Core standards focus on process and not on content. And the best example I can use is a story that someone told me, someone that I met that was a grandfather, had his children on a car trip going across the country. And he was testing his young grandchildren who were ranging in ages from kindergarten up to about 5th grade in the car with him, saying, hey, when I was a kid, we used to play this game if we could name all the capitals every time we crossed a new state. We tried to see if anyone could remember the capitals. And so he started playing this game with his grandchildren. And when he asked, when they crossed into Missouri, what's the capital of Missouri? In 30 seconds, all 4 of his grandchildren had pulled it up on their iPads. Okay, so we're teaching states and capitals and teaching kids to memorize them in social studies classes, but they can find it out in 5 seconds on their technology. So one thing that I think is most important to focus on is with Common Core standards, we need to ask ourselves, why are we spending 6 weeks teaching states and capitals when they can look it up in 5 seconds? This challenges some people. Well, students need to know that. That's something I want you to wrestle with a little bit when you're looking at curriculum development is with Common Core, it's about process. It's about teaching students how to access information, how to research, not about memorizing facts and memorizing states and capitals. And another important feature of Common Core standards is the emphasis on these things, which none of us could argue would ever be a bad thing. Communication skills. None of you could tell me that in your career right now as an educator that communication isn't probably one of the most important things that you do. In any job you can think of, whether it's right out of high school or whether it's after an 8-year degree, communication is critical. We have to teach students how to communicate. Collaboration with each other, people who can work together and solve problems, is a critical life skill. Having depth of understanding, not just knowing a lot of information, but knowing some information and knowing it really well. And an emphasis on making meaning and having strategies for how to make meaning. And accessing and using information for multiple purposes, that when I learn something, I can apply it to multiple skills and not just, for example, learning how to tie shoes. It's important, we all need to know how to tie shoes, but how often do you tie a shoe or you tie a bow to have that skill? It's very limited. When we think about Common Core standards, we think about teaching something that has a wide application. So when I teach one skill, they can apply it to many other areas. So I hope nobody can argue with any of those as being important. So now I think we're ready to move on. Okay, so the things that I'm going to touch on and quickly, is what is college and career readiness? What does that actually mean for ELA and math? And what is curriculum? I find a lot of people have misconceptions and misunderstandings about even what the word curriculum means. And then we're going to talk about when you develop curriculum in ELA and math. I'm going to give you some key ideas. I'm not going to solve all of your curriculum needs standing up here in the next 20 minutes. I wish I could do that. If we had all day or another week together, I might be able to just brush the surface. But for today, I'm going to give you some things that I'd like you to focus on for whatever your grade level is and whatever your subject is, so that you can take that back with you. And then we'll briefly touch at the end on next steps for professional development, what to do when you're finished with this information today. Okay, again, I'm not going to teach you how to develop curriculum in 30 minutes. Okay, so let's talk about curriculum or college and career readiness first. Basically, I'm going to talk a little bit for the next few minutes about the look-fors in your curriculum. So either in your current curriculum or a curriculum that you're currently developing or working on. The college and career readiness element of these standards is really critical that you put that lens on when you're looking at what you're teaching. Look carefully and see what it is that you are teaching and ask yourself, am I preparing students for the future? And I challenge even kindergarten and first grade teachers to do that. It seems very far away and abstract for you, but it's really important that you look for that when you're looking at what you're teaching. In ELA, the look-fors are strong content knowledge, responding to various demands of audience, task, and purpose. For example, when you're looking at writing, be very, very focused with your students on teaching them writing for an audience. Who are you writing for? Because when you're writing for a friend versus writing a research paper, your tone, your voice should be quite different. And there's a place for both, and we need to teach students how to write for all different types of audiences. But I don't think that if we don't focus on that particular part, the audience, the task, the purpose, enough, then students lose sight. They just think writing is writing, for example. Teach students how to comprehend as well as critique, not just looking for the right answers, but critiquing text. We need to teach them how to do that. That doesn't come naturally. Students think that if it's written down, I can't argue with it. Someone way smarter than me wrote it, right? So you need to teach students how to critique text. We need to teach students with Common Core standards how to value evidence. And you see that all over the ELA standards. I see people nodding their heads. You see all over the place. Tell me why. Where did you find that information? Be ready to back it up. We need to be able to teach students how to demonstrate independence. This is a hard one for elementary teachers. In my experience, we like to hold kids' hands a lot, don't we? We like to help them as much as we can because that's our nature, to help kids. But we're not helping them if we're not allowing them to practice things independently. So I challenge you to think about making sure that we are allowing students enough time to demonstrate independence. Come to understand other perspectives and cultures. Yes, those are in the ELA standards, not just the social studies standards. You're going to notice if you dig really deeply, you will find there's a lot in there about perspectives, about culture, and that comes with that 50% informational text. And we'll talk when we get later into what units of study can look like and how you can bring some of these things into your reading and writing curriculum. When you're looking at curriculum, look to see how you're using technology and digital media, even if it's out of your comfort zone. We have to. Our kids need us to teach that way. So whether you're comfortable with it or not, get ready and get comfortable because we need to be teaching students digital literacy. And the one big concern that a lot of teachers had when the Common Core standards came out were that text complexity band. And the first thing people saw was, oh, they have to read so much more difficult text. Yes, they do. Because when they get to college or when they get to their careers, they're going to have to read more difficult text, and students were not ready for that. So it means starting in kindergarten and then first grade and second grade. They were very realistic, in my opinion, with those text complexity bands in giving them just a right amount of boost for each grade level. Okay, the look-fors in math. When you're examining your math curriculum, please look to see if these items are there to help prepare students for college and career. Students need to make sense of problems and persevere in solving them, which later I'm going to talk about time and the amounts of time. But look very carefully at these math, college, and career readiness skills. And look at how embedded into each of these is just so much time. Okay, students need time to mess with this, time to solve problems, time to think about them, time to rework them. They need to be able to reason abstractly and quantitatively. They need to be able to model with mathematics. They need to be able to look for and make good use of structure and construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. There's that word critique again. Boy, we saw that in ELA too, isn't it? We should be looking in your curriculum for opportunities for students to be critiquing in math and ELA. Attend to precision and to look for and express regularity in repeated reasoning, and to use tools strategically like calculators and rulers to have a purpose, just like when I talked about writing, having a purpose. Math has a purpose too. We need to put it out there to students why they need to learn math, what they're going to need to use it for, and give them the tools they need to do that. I just threw in a few quotes that I found from people that are in the workplace, either at university level or out there in the market. I'm just going to let you read some of these on your own about what they're saying about what kind of students they're looking for in their college or career positions. So do you see collaboration, communication, literacy, math? That's why the Common Core standards are here, because educators are listening. That's our job, to prepare students for the future. And if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to change some things. So before we move into some of my key ideas for curriculum development, I want to just make sure first we all understand curriculum. Curriculum, or Common Core standards, are merely the what that we have to teach. And teachers get very frustrated by this, in my experience. They want someone to hand them the manual, don't you? Okay, we saw the Common Core standards and everyone said, that's fine, but just tell me how to do it. Okay, I'll do it, but you need to tell me how to do it. Give me a book, right? Not so easy, okay? Those were developed purposely without a manual. They're just telling us what the outcome is. We need to work together as teachers to address the how, which is the path that students must take to get there. And you have to have your hands in that. You absolutely, if you hear nothing else from what I say to you today, absolutely, 100%, you have to have your hands in that process. Developing curriculum for your students, they're your students. You should have a say in how they're going to get there. Teachers must design the curriculum and the assessments. It is not a textbook. There's my other soapbox moment for the day, and then I'm all done, I promise. Okay, this does not come in a textbook. You can't buy it. If you're looking for the magic bullet, you're going to spend a lot of money and time learning something that is not the magic bullet. The magic bullet is sitting in this room right now, and it's all of you. Teachers help kids, not books. So please do not spend your energy looking for something to hold in your hand that's going to tell you how to teach Common Core standards. Is it hard? Yes. It is absolutely hard to develop curriculum. It's messy, but it is so much more meaningful when you're invested in it and you're part of the process. Teachers must also be part of developing those assessments. You should have a say in what it looks like when they sit down to show you whether they knew how to do it. Because you're the one teaching, you should have a say in how you're assessing them as well. I use this reference a lot when I do curriculum with teachers that I work with. The best analogy is it's like a roadmap. So your end point, where you're going, I purposely put up here, if you don't recognize, this is Florida, near Disney World, just because we can all dream, right? Instead of being here, but okay. The end point is where they're going. Those are the standards. That's mastery. That's where we want everybody to get, okay? But the map to get there is how we're going to get there, and that also might be a little bit different for everybody, won't it? Somebody might be brave and decide to take all the back roads. I'm a little bit more adventurous traveler, okay? Or maybe we have someone who wants to take the scenic route, right? Or we have someone who, like me, just get me there as quick as possible. I want to take all the interstates. Now, if you think about that with the analogy of students, we have students who maybe aren't ready to be on the highway yet, and they need us to help them get on there. And they might have to take some back roads. We might have to spend some time in small groups with them. The stopping points along the way, your little rest stops, okay, those are opportunities for you to assess your students to see if you're ready to continue on your journey. You have to do assessments along the way. Otherwise, you're moving, you're going through the motions. And some of your kids are coming along with you, and some of them you left in the bathroom at the rest stop, okay? No leaving kids in the bathrooms, that's very dangerous. Make sure all your kids are with you when you're back on the road. That's what assessments are for. You may need to alter the route. You may need to take some students on a different path than other ones. As long as everyone gets where you need to go at the end, you're doing your job well. But it's about being creative too. And the other important part of this is what you bring with you in your bag. Okay, when you go to your classroom, the resources that you bring, just like when you're packing for a trip. If you're going to Florida, you're probably not bringing a lot of sweaters, hopefully not. Otherwise, you're going to regret it, okay? When you're packing for your curriculum and you're bringing resources with you, you can only bring so much. You only have so much time. Make sure you're bringing the best stuff with you that meets the needs of your students, which is why I believe the answer doesn't come from a textbook, because that's supposed to be a one-size-fits-all approach, and we all know our kids aren't one size, are they? So be very careful. Okay, when you're mapping any standards, keep your eye on the destination. So when you're developing curriculum, always keep your sight on the end. If you're doing ELA, always look at those anchor standards just to keep in mind where you're going. Always ask yourself, is this lesson or unit or activity that I'm doing getting me closer to my destination? So when you're spending 6 weeks on a dinosaur unit or 6 weeks on your states and capital unit, you may want to stop and think about, is this getting me closer to my destination? Maybe it is. I'm just asking you to ask yourselves those questions when you're thinking about what you're teaching. Build in effective assessments. Identify whether students are on track and be able to identify their specific strengths and weaknesses. And that doesn't come from a multiple choice test. You are going to have to do some thinking and analyzing of student work. Yes, it's harder, but you can't do it without it. You have to be willing to analyze your students' work and think about what their strengths and weaknesses are so that you can get them back on the road towards their destination. And critique, again, I'm going to say this a lot today, critique what you bring with you. Make sure you're only bringing the best stuff with you. And don't look for the textbooks that have the big gold sticker on the front that say Common Core aligned. Be critical. We're going to teach kids how to be critical. You need to be critical too. Okay, when you're mapping specifically for Common Core standards, focus on reading, writing, math. They're the big ones. Critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity. Make sure all of those are embedded into every unit that you develop. So this could almost be a checklist for you. When you're designing a unit, is there critical thinking? Is there opportunity for collaboration? Is there communication opportunities for students? And is there opportunities for them to be creative in their product? And make sure that we have performance-based assessments. Okay, some key ideas to focus on. Integration is probably the most important change that I think people are finally starting to understand with Common Core standards. Common Core standards allow for such a beautiful connection between content area and literacy, between math and literacy, between reading and writing. Everything is meant to fit together. When you read the Common Core standards, in fact, you'll notice some of them sound a lot alike. It's because they're intended to. They're intended to be integrated and cross-curricular. It's why there's standards for social studies and science and technical subjects in literacy, because they want us to integrate everything. It makes perfect sense. Our brain learns better that way. There's brain research that says our brain actually learns better when things are integrated. It's about depth of content. It's not about hurry, get through all of this content. It's about take your time and teach it well and make sure they know and understand everything completely. It's not a race. Make sure, again, I brought this up earlier, you look when you're developing curriculum, make sure that you've embedded opportunities for valuing evidence in math, in reading, in writing, everything. Back it up, back up your thinking. Time. You're going to see that as a recurring theme. That even goes back up to the integration. That takes time too. And depth takes time. If we're going to allow kids to get messy and problem solve and talk to each other and explore and research, it's going to take time. If we try and rush it, we're not going to do it well. Make sure, again, those communication and collaboration opportunities are built into every unit. And reduce teaching skills in isolation. I use the tying shoe example. My other favorite example is grammar. Okay, grammar taught in isolation does not work. When you teach students how to diagram sentences, how many of you as adults diagram sentences every day to write a letter to somebody to tell them something, right? Never happens. Diagramming sentences, I'm sorry if I've offended someone who values doing that every day, but it does not show any correlation to actual application of learning. Teach students how to communicate effectively. Is grammar part of that? Yes. Teach grammar within a writing program. Teach them how to use adjectives, adverbs, and nouns to communicate effectively, not just to label things in a sentence. So think critically about those kinds of things. Make sure everything has a connection to an authentic experience and practice. And another key idea for curriculum development is to please make sure that you work with grade levels below you and above you, and I even think K through 12. Very powerful to know where they've been and where they're going. It really impacts the curriculum that you write. So that's some advice for me as well. Okay, I'm going to start talking fast. I knew this was going to happen. I just get going on stuff and I can't stop. Okay, key features when you're developing curriculum for ELA specifically, and then I'm going to get through a few things in math. The 50%. Everything you read, everything they're exposed to, half needs to be fiction, half needs to be informational. Look at those text complexity bands and make sure that your grade levels are stepping up to the plate, because the grade level after you is counting on it, right? Okay, so we're counting on all of you to step it up a little bit. We're going to talk about close reading just very briefly. That needs to be embedded into all of the curriculum units that you develop. Make sure research is a key part of everything they're doing, and that evidence-based, that valuing evidence in digital literacy. I'm going to show you, I'm going to skip this and come back to it just for a quick minute. I'm going to show you, how many of you have seen this chart, the content frameworks? Oh, then I'm glad I showed you. I figured maybe everybody's hand would go up. This is an amazing, helpful tool for designing curriculum. It is on the PARC website, parkonline.com. If you haven't been there yet, go to Teachers, and under Teachers, you're going to see a link to the assessment, and then you're going to have to dig around, or you can just do a search for content frameworks and you'll find it faster. But dig around on the PARC website and you will find content frameworks for each grade level. Let me briefly explain this because it's not, I know you can't see it real well. The way these are organized is that they're called modules, A, B, C, and D. Those are really like quarters. Okay, if your school year is organized into quarters, that's quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. The Common Core Standards and some people that worked with them helped develop this tool so that teachers could see how to spread these standards out throughout the year. Because that's what everybody's been asking. Just give me a timeline. So this does that in a very general way. You can see that they offer an extended text each quarter, and there's your 50-50. You see two of each. Then you see short text that cover all of the genre that are within 4th grade standards. So the blue is the reading, the orange is writing, and at the end, research is embedded into both. What's down at the bottom is the base that holds all of that together. Within your reading, your writing, and your research, all of these standards need to be part of those units. It's just a really nice visual when you're planning curriculum, so I encourage you, and I wish I could spend more time on it, but I can't, so I'm just doing a lot of teasing today, giving you little teasers. Okay, I mentioned close reading. How many of you have heard of close reading? It's talked about a lot. Perfect, then I'm going to keep moving. How about that? Basically read the same text over and over again for multiple purposes. Okay, so I've already explained the content frameworks, and again, parkonline.com is a great resource. They also have other really helpful information for you, even more than the Common Core Standards website has. And an example of a unit might be to start doing that integration would be to say, discuss, if you're doing, let's say literature. This could also work for a nonfiction or informational unit. Discuss text, have high-level discussions about it, do deep meaning, select vocabulary, then use the same text as a mentor text for writing. In this case, writing realistic fiction or personal narrative. Then your writing standards come in, and then you're teaching your grammar and your spelling standards embedded into your writing unit. Pretty easy, right? And oh, that didn't turn out so well, did it? It looked nice on my screen. But poetry, so that same cycle here, you could do that with poetry, you could do it with informational, you could do it with persuasive or argument writing, okay? Okay, real quickly, because I know I'm running out of time, let's talk about math. I told you I was going to get more wound up about literacy anyway, so sorry. 3 essentials when you're looking at your math curriculum. Conceptual understanding has to be embedded. It absolutely has to spend more time making sure students understand concepts. Go deep, just like we're going deep with reading. It's beyond memorization of facts and formulas. Students need to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Speed and accuracy are emphasized. It's very important to be able to, once we have the concepts, to start solving problems quickly and use those skills. And this one, to me, I think is the most important because ultimately it's what we're preparing them for, to use this to help them in the future. We need to put in front of them problems that are real life. Time. I could say this about ELA too. This takes time. If we're going to let kids solve problems and be critical and think deeply, it's not going to happen in 2 50-minute lessons. We're talking long periods of time and units of study. So when you're looking at curriculum, be very cognizant of that fact. And how many of you have seen this before, math teachers out there? Okay, this is, again, why it's important to do articulation across grade levels, because you need to understand where they're coming from and what they've had. And this shows you how important it is for them to reach mastery of the concepts in your grade level. Because if they don't, they might not get them again. This is really important. When you're designing curriculum, please have this document in front of you so that you understand why you're doing what you're doing and why you need to do it well. Because look what happens. Things drop off. So be very, very cognizant of this fact as well. Okay, so real quickly, while I finish up, some things to think about for taking with you when you leave today and go back to your districts in the fall. Collaboration, working together is critical. You need to get messy with the teachers that teach in your grade level or in your department or on your team. Look at student work. Analyze and discuss assessment data. How are your students doing? Review and modify your assessments regularly. And design a system that follows from kindergarten to first grade to second grade. If you, as a fifth grade teacher, are doing something vastly different than fourth grade and sixth grade, that's not a system, and that's not going to help kids. It's a continuous examination of your resources. Think critically about the books that you're using, the materials that you're putting in front of kids, and make sure, again, always go back to those look-fors that I mentioned at the beginning. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing helping them get to their destination? And that's just a brief example. If you haven't already done that, I encourage you, especially in ELA. You'll see it a lot more clearly in ELA. In math, because of that grade level span, it's not as clear to see. But in ELA, if you take a standard and watch it over time, really, really great activity. And really important for if you're a high school teacher to look at what happened in kindergarten, first and second. If you're a kindergarten teacher, important to see what they're doing in second and third grade. Important buy-in is needed in your buildings. People need to embrace rigor. Yes, it's harder, but we need to embrace high expectations. We need to believe that our students can meet these standards. We're not teaching the same way we always taught. We're not. We're giving kids time to explore. It's student-centered. It's messier. It's time to think. There's not always right answers, but that's life. And we need to prepare students for what they're going to face in the future. And social studies, science, math teachers need to embrace that they are now literacy teachers as well. And that's a pretty hard sell sometimes when we also have content to teach. And we need to make sure that our school board, our parents, and our community have buy-in. How many of you, real quick, how many of you have had some pushback from parents in your schools about Common Core? So be proactive about that. Make sure that we're delivering the messages that I started out delivering about the good in them. If we answer back, yeah, I know, they're rigorous, aren't they? Right? What do they think they're doing, these politicians? Remember how that sounds to the community. Embrace them. When parents have questions for you, say, yes, they are more rigorous. It's going to take us a little more time to get there, but I believe our students can do it. I'm equipped with the tools that I need to help your child get what they need. Be careful how you respond. And I don't know if I have time for questions. I know you have to be somewhere at 2. So how about if I hang out up here for a little bit in case you want to